Hello guys, and tonight Mr. Shaw is going to help you out with your homework. If you're right now working on your Vectors 2 packet and maybe you're struggling a little bit, well, you can say thank you to one of your classmates that they actually asked the very first question over the homework to be filed to me through email, and I'm very happy about this. So let's take a look at this, and I will go through and I will solve as many problems as I can before I go crazy. Okay, so know how to find resultants when the angle between the forces are. Now we'll take a look. We've got three options. We're going to have 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 0 degrees, and the last row is going to be kind of annoying. It says the range of all possible resultants, and you'll see what that's going to be in a bit. Now if we look at our columns though, we start off, we have a first one, and it says that we're going to have these two vectors, and these are our magnitudes of our vectors. So these are the magnitudes of our two vectors, and this is going to be the degrees between our two vectors. So let's go over and I'll show you guys in another document how these three situations look. So let's go over in document 1, and I'm going to quickly draw our vectors. So I'm just going to, let's put it a little further down. So here is our first vector. And I'm just going to draw three vectors all going the same way, and you'll see in a second why I'm doing that. Just because Mr. Shaw is a little tired. Just going to set all three of these up going the same way. So the first one, it says our vectors are separated by 90 degrees. So here's our first vector, and now I'm going to draw a second vector that goes straight up. And that the angle between these two vectors is going to be 90 degrees. So let's just write that in. 90 degrees. Okay, so there's that. Now, our next one is 180 degrees. So let's do this. Now, just real quick, a note. This program doesn't let me put vectors at the exact same location, so I can only put them very close to each other. I can't put them right on top of each other. And these two vectors are at 180 degrees. And our last vectors are the most interesting or most common vectors. You'll see two vectors going in the same direction. Now these should be overlapping, but I put them side by side. The program won't let me put them on top of each other. And this actually lets us see kind of what they look like. So this would be two vectors that are at 0 degrees. Okay, so now let's start talking about how these vectors behave. So let's go down and we'll look at this 0 one a little closer. Now remember how we deal with vectors in this class. We deal with vectors head to tail. So when we take these vectors, we're going to add them together head to tail. And you'll get this. Get that off there. We'll get this. And what you'll see is you will actually produce a resultant that looks like this. This blue arrow I'm drawing right here is your resultant. So in the case of 0 degrees, when you have 0 degrees between two vectors, you will have addition. Okay, excellent. So they will add up, and they will add up very simply, almost exactly like you remember addition in elementary school. 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 2 is 4. You'll just add up vectors like that. Now, when we get to the 180, these are vectors in opposite directions. So you'll see that once again we have to add them together head to tail just like before. So actually I can make these overlap a little bit. Now you'll notice our origin is right here, and here is the head. So I need to draw a line. I'm going to draw a little bit up, and you'll see that our vector is going to look like this. In this case, I keep doing this. In this case, this tiny blue line is our resultant from adding those two big vectors. So what you should get from this demonstration, guys, is that when you take two vectors separated by 180 degrees, they subtract. And this is a fun program to write with. I look like a kid. Okay, now the next one, this is what you should be familiar with from this week. Vectors separated by 180 I'm sorry, not 180 degrees, 90 degrees. So once again, add them together head to tail by moving this, and we're going to make a blue line that's going to become the hypotenuse. Now once again, I can't make it perfect like I'd like, but the blue line becomes the hypotenuse of my triangle. So we've made a triangle. You'll find the hypotenuse, and you'll find that hypotenuse by using Pythagorean theorem. So this is your classic head to tail perpendicular vector addition. So let's take a look back at the assignment. We have this sheet here. We're going to take a look at the example problem. So let's look at 0 first. Remember what we said about 0 degrees over here. When you have 0 degrees, you add. So if you take 3 and 4, you will actually get 7. I'm back in, still in vector mode. You will get 7 degrees. Now, if you take a look back at our notes again, when we had 180 degrees, 180 degrees is subtraction. So that's two vectors going in opposite direction. So when you have a vector going one way and a vector going the other way, they will cancel each other out to some degree. Just like if you and your friend push against each other in opposite directions as hard as you can, those vectors will cancel out. So when those vectors cancel out, they subtract. So in this case, 4 minus 3 will give you 1. Now the last case, that's the most complicated case. That's the one where you have to make a triangle. And I'll make a quick triangle up here. We'll have this one and this one. And now we have to look at our hypotenuse, which I'll make another color. We'll make it green. So now, in this case, in this particular problem, it tells us that one side of our triangle is going to be 3. One side is 4, and you guys know this from your geometry classes that this is going to be a 3, 4, 5 triangle. And that's actually how they found this here. So when you have 90 degrees, you're going to use Pythagorean theorem. So for this one, Pythagorean theorem right here, this one right here, Pythagorean theorem, and this one right here, you're going to subtract. This one right here, you're going to subtract. This one you'll add. This one you'll add. Now let's get to this bottom row. Now you take a look, it says range of all possible results. Now when you add vectors, you have a whole range of possible results. The smallest, the minimum of that range is going to be 180 degrees, which will give you 1. When you have 0 though, you'll have the maximum of your range. And in fact, you can create any vector in between by adding vectors between 1 and 7. So if I wanted to make, let's say, a 6 Newton length vector, I could do something like this. I could take one vector like so, and I could take another vector that looks possibly like this, and I could add them together, head to tail, and I could get a resultant that looks something like this. And this might be a case where I get a vector that has a magnitude, a length of 6 newtons. Now notice guys, I keep saying magnitude a lot. Magnitude gives me the freedom when talking about vectors to ignore their direction. Okay, hopefully this first part is informative. I'll make another video in a second. Thanks for listening.